There are places and moments in America where this nation's destiny has been decided. Selma is such a place. In one afternoon, 50 years ago, so much of our turbulent history, the stain of slavery and anguish of civil war, the yoke of segregation and tyranny of Jim Crow, the death of 4 little girls in Birmingham, and the dream of a Baptist preacher. All that history met on this bridge. The Americans who crossed this bridge, they were not physically imposing. What they did here will reverberate through the ages. Not because the change they won was preordained, not because their victory was complete, but because they proved that nonviolent change is possible, that love and hope can conquer hate.
My father was from Texas, and he came to Alabama because of Booker T. Washington and the principles that he taught of, making things for yourself. And he got his whole family, me, and I have 3 brothers and a sister, involved in civil rights at a very early age. He was very instrumental in starting the NAACP in my hometown, which is Tuskegee Institute, Alabama. And his specialty was voter registration. He was one of the original plaintiffs in a case that's called Gomillion versus Lightfoot. The white wanted to control the power of the city and the county. They gerrymandered the boundaries, and it became sort of like a 26-sided figure. They did it such that there were only 6 black people left in the city which could register and vote any city elections. So he was a plaintiff in that case, and that case went to the Supreme Court, and we won that case, and as a result of that, we've had quite a few black officials. Then later on, I became involved in a school desegregation case, which is named for me, but it was really the brains of my father, because although the city was 80% black, it was a school system where blacks had to pass great schools to go to quote-unquote black schools. They had the better textbooks, they had the better paper, pencils, and supplies. But all the time, the black principals and teachers were going to different churches, raising money just to provide supplies and things for schools. When I got to be a senior in high school, which was in 1963, they started the case of Lee versus Macon County, which initially it was just to desegregate the schools in Tuskegee proper. But on the day that school was supposed to start, the governor, George Wallace, saw fit to usurp the powers of everyone else and sent state troopers and police to close the school, saying that if any other students were entered into the school, then it would become a fire hazard. Then the lawyers thought, well, let's do this. We'll enjoin all of the county school systems in the state that were not already under some kind of court order into one case. Thus, whatever actions were taken, whatever decisions were rendered as results of this, it would desegregate all of the schools in the state that were not already desegregated. I was one of the first 2 black students to go to Auburn University, and I joined this march when it was in Montgomery, Alabama in 1965, and marched from St. Jude to the Capitol the next day. Thank you.
I was born in Prattville, Alabama, across the river in Autauga County. I was reared by my grandparents. I am the child of a teenage mom. My grandparents were sharecroppers. They moved to Montgomery, Alabama in 1953. In 1954, I was baptized in the First Baptist Church of here in Montgomery, Alabama, by the Reverend Dr. Ralph David Abernathy. As a teenager of 13 years, in 1955, during the 381 days of the Montgomery bus boycott, I passed out leaflets to promote the weekly mass meetings which took place here in the city of Montgomery, during the Montgomery bus boycott. During the walk from Selma to Montgomery, I was a senior at Alabama State, and Brother Willie Ricks and Snick came on our campus. I was a part, quote, of the student leadership at State at the time, president of my senior class. I started my career at SCLC in 1969 after I finished my seminary work at ITC. I went there with a 2-year commitment to a brother by the name of T.Y. Rogers, who taught a course in urban ministry as a staff member of SCLC, and he asked me what I was going to do. So I went with a 2-year commitment, but I ended up serving a 38-year career.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the continuation of the 50th celebration and the fight for the voting rights. My name is Miss Annie Pearl Avery. You can call me Annie Pearl. Some people call me Annie Pearl, some say Pearl, some say Avery, some say Ann. I was about 16 or 17, and I started, when I heard about the Freedom Riders, I said, if they come to Birmingham, I'm going with them. When I heard they were coming to Birmingham, I purchased a ticket on the Greyhound to go from Birmingham to Montgomery. Just before they arrived in Birmingham, I remember the horrific things that happened to them and to the Freedom Riders in Anniston, Alabama. And that bus stayed there for a couple of years right there on the property of the Greyhound bus. Every time I went someplace on Greyhound, the bus was there, still there in the back of the bus station. I met a young man by the name of Wilson Brown. He eventually came to work for SCLC, but I met him. Reverend Shuttlesworth had sent him down to the bus station to welcome the Freedom Riders into Birmingham. And when I met him, I was so excited. I said, I got my own ticket and I'm ready to go. And the thing about it was, when I told him about this ticket, I also bought a knife. I bought me a knife. I was going to protect myself on the bus with this knife. It was a switchblade, you know. You push the buttons. I was really getting professional. I had never had a knife before. I felt that I felt I had to have one, but I was going to get a good one. And you push the button and the blade jump out. Wilson said, well, you can't go because you don't understand the concept of nonviolence. Well, I had been seeing the word, and I had been hearing the word, but I didn't understand it. I said, explain it to me. Because it wasn't in the dictionary at times. See, I'd gone to the dictionary to look for the word. I always went to the dictionary when it was something I didn't understand. There's a lot of information that they tell you about the 8 parts of speech right there in the dictionary. If you know how to go look for it, they tell you which one's to put. He said, well, that's when somebody hits you, you can't hit them back. I said, I don't think I want to do that. I got a refund for my ticket. 3 weeks later, Wilson approached me again at the AG Gaston Lounge where I hung out with my friends in the coffee shop there. And he says, how would you like to go to Atlanta to a Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee meeting? Well, I thought of it as a threefold. Number one, I wanted to learn more about the civil rights movement. Number two, I hadn't ever been to Atlanta before. Number three, I was going to get the opportunity to go free. So I left my knife at home, and when I went to the first SNCC meeting, these were the first decent white people that I've met in my life. I met Ann Brayton, Carl Brayton, Bob Zellner, Bill Hanson, and a whole host of Dottie Zellner, she was Dottie Miller at the time, but I met a whole host of people, and it changed my life in terms of, because right now I'm just I can't stand to see injustice. But I was in a hurry. I wanted to get things done. Well, I wasn't trying to compete with nobody. I was just anxious to get everything over with. And I found out that it wasn't over with. It ain't gonna never be over with, don't seem like.
That's right.
I found out that Miss Ella Baker at that time had already spent 25 years of her life committed to civil rights. That's a long time. And I was just 16 or 17 when this happened. So, a lot of these people were my mentors. I learned something from everyone that I associated with. Oh yeah, Jim Foreman. I met Foreman, Jim Foreman, and Miss Ella Baker. It was a pleasure and an honor to have been associated with all of the people.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
My name is Ralph Worrell. I'm 85 years old and I'm still on the battlefield. And my life was turned around back in 1963 on the 28th day of August. And that is when Martin Luther King gave his speech, I Have a Dream. And from that day on, I made up within my mind that I'm going to follow this dynamic leader and stay with his organization as long as I can. I was on the staff for 43 years, but it's about 48 years that I was with SELC. In 1963, we marched on Washington. We marched on Washington for jobs, education, immigration, justice, equality, voting rights. And 50 years later, we were back in Washington on the same issues, on the very same issues. And when I see things like this and I look on the wall, my wall sometimes, I did get a couple of awards. And I see these awards, I become depressed to see that after all of these years of sacrifice, service, that nothing has changed. I just say everything has changed and nothing has changed. That's what that really means. It is my intention to continue the fight for equality and justice. I feel the hope. When I look at you young folk coming together and with the kind of spirit and minds that you all have, I feel that there is hope for us. And I want you all to understand that the struggle is not easy.
That's right.
It's not easy at all.
That's right.
There is battles coming at you left and right.
That's right.
And it's up to you to determine how to pick your battles.
That's right.
You can't fight every battle, but you got to pick the battle that is important to you, important to the community, important to America. So I want you all to just continue in the spirit that I see, especially the spirit that I see here in the last few days, that I'm proud of each and every one of y'all.
Amen.
and the spirit that I see among you all, I know that there is hope and there's going to be justice in this country because of you all. Thank you much.
But one of the things I need to admonish you to do right now at your age, okay? Start keeping a daily diary of the experiences that you're having. Okay, don't let a day go by and don't procrastinate because you think you're going to remember everything. Okay? You are now making history, so you need to start writing history because it's going to be your history in less than 50 years. My first actual participation in the nonviolent movement was in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was a student at the American Baptist College, and I was classmate, in fact roommate with John Lewis and Jim Bevel, who you mentioned there. And we had, well, it was Diane Nash was at Fisk University, Marion Barry was over there at Tennessee State. And we were trained by James Lawson, Jr. There's no substitute for the training. It's no coincidence that the largest number of staff people that was on the executive staff over programs and that sort of thing that worked with Martin Luther King were trained in Nashville. Okay? There's no coincidence that when the freedom rides were stopped with violence, okay, that he mentioned, that Anna Perry mentioned in terms of Anniston and Birmingham, it was a Nashville group that said, no, we can't stop the freedom rides. We must continue. And Diane Nash was the coordinator for us in Nashville sit-in movement, and we just made her the coordinator for the freedom rides when we took off. We dropped out in the middle of our exams, okay? Because we wanted to show the way, so when the other students got out of school and finished their exams, okay, they would know exactly what to do. So we had to go. So I was on that first wave that left out of Birmingham that she's talking about, all right? So I've continued with the movement, not because of my grandchildren, and I wanted to make things better for them. Of course I did. I wanted to do it for my grandmother. So she would, that's why I was so anxious for it to happen, okay? And we wanted everything to happen. See, in Nashville, we had not only desegregated the lunch counters in Nashville in 1960, we desegregated the bus station because it was also downtown. So the Nashville bus station was desegregated in 1960. So what you would do is ride a segregated bus from Virginia until you got to Nashville, and you got off the segregated bus from the back, and you went into an integrated bus station. Yeah, because lunch counters and waiting rooms and everything, restrooms, all that was integrated. That's the other reason why we took off and went on a freedom ride. We'd already desegregated our lunch counters and the bus station. We knew it could be done. When the freedom rides were over, and by the way, we desegregated the interstate buses from what? Started in May. By November, the buses were totally desegregated. All the signs were down. That was the shortest movement I've ever been in. Well, maybe not, because Nashville was 3 months. But we went ahead and desegregated the movie theaters too in Nashville. And the restaurants. We cleaned up the whole place while we were there, so we wouldn't have to come back. The only thing we weren't able to desegregate was the jail. But we got invited back because we were such good inmates. They asked us to come back to see them. Bill Hanson was in Arkansas, and Bob Moses in Mississippi, and Charles Sherrod over there in southwest Georgia, and that was Alabama. But they had an X through it. Right through Selma, Alabama, an X. I said, well, what? He said, no. We decided we're not going to Selma, Alabama, Dallas County. And we've already sent 2 teams of SNCC people down there. Independently, they came back with the same result. Nothing happened in Selma. There will not be a Selma movement. And these were SNCC folk. Folks have been to jail, freedom rides, sit-ins, and all that tough and beaten up. So it wasn't like, little goody two-shoes, you know? They were tough. They came back and said, hey, some is too tough, okay, even for the toughest. 2 teams came back with the same thing. And you know what the reason was? Same reason. White folks are too mean, and black folks are too afraid. The last words that Martin Luther King said to me, April 4th, 1968, Lorraine Hotel, in his room. He said, Bernard, or he said Lafayette, that's what he said. Lafayette, the next campaign we're going to do is to internationalize and institutionalize nonviolence, comma. Okay. 5 hours later, I was landing in Washington, D.C., and that's how I heard that Martin Luther King was killed. So we finished it. We had to do a funeral. We had to do the garbage strike workers in Memphis. And then we had to do the Poor People's Campaign. And then I had to get back in school. And I finished, 3 degrees in 5 years, including that doctorate from Harvard University, because I was moving fast. And I wanted to get that taken care of so I can start around the world. We have about 38 centers and institutions around the world, okay, including prisons. 75 organized Green Haven, New York, prison. It's called AVP, and you can Google that, AVP, Alternatives to Violence Project. Today, that program is in 50 countries around the world and 30 states. You probably heard of it already, okay? That's just one example, all right? We have a prison in Colombia, Latin America, okay, near Medellin, where they were killing 6 people a day, and now that prison doesn't kill anybody else. And in fact, they bring children from the schools to the prison so that the inmates are training them in nonviolence. Thank you.
Noticing any parallels now than from when you began marching and before then, just societally and culturally?
My name is Will Laurie. I'm a senior at Jefferson County Open School. And I was wondering what was one of your brightest moments as a part of the movement?
My brightest moment in the movement as a junior in college, I was one of 3 plaintiffs in Frank M. Johnson Federal Court, which desegregated the public library of the city of Montgomery, Alabama.
I'm still doing the same thing for the same reasons that I did 56 years ago. That bothers me. And I know that it's going to be like chipping away at a mountain with a hammer. And I also know that it's going to take all of us to do it. At some point, we're going to have to come together, the ones who are still alive. We need to come together and build some type of coalition and try to get some of these problems resolved.
In 1982, we marched from Pickens County, Alabama, to Washington, D.C., to get the Voting Rights Act extended. And we hit about 70 cities going to Washington. Right outside of Virginia, I think it was the 3rd of July. The 3rd of July, I think it was. That following morning, we had planned to not cross the bridge, get on the bridge and block up the traffic in Washington, D.C. Right before that happened, we got word that the bill was extended. The point I'm trying to make is that if we get together, put our forces together, we could change things and get the things that we need. That's why I'm depending on you young folk to do the job.
What was your expectations from the 50th anniversary of Selma March, and have you met them yet?
My expectation was to finish the march. I'm going to complete it Friday. I did the same march 3 years ago. At that time, I was, 65, 66? I'm 69 now. And I do plan to finish this march.
Amen.
So what we expect you to do is with all of the knowledge and skills, and you have a lot more than we could ever imagine.
Hi, my name is Taylor Frisbee. I'm a junior at JCOS. And my question was, what do you guys see as the next, big issue in civil rights?
After the Voting Rights Act and all of this, and we're having trouble with Section 5, they gutted Section 5, and it's ineffective. I'm saying all over the country, they're coming up with all kind of rouges and ways to slow the vote down, discourage people from voting. Your voter ID, you got to have a marriage license, especially for the women. You got to have a marriage license and your birth certificate and all of this stuff. And the only thing you had to do before was just sign a piece of paper saying that you were a United States citizen. During Reconstruction, there was a voter ID. You see, it's kind of reverting back, and it will do that.
Right now, in 2015, 50 years after Selma, there are laws across this country designed to make it harder for people to vote. As we speak, more such laws are being proposed. Meanwhile, the Voting Rights Act, the culmination of so much blood, so much sweat and tears, the product of so much sacrifice in the face of wanton violence, the Voting Rights Act stands weakened. Its future subject to political rancor.
What do? You can't kill them. No, you can, but I'm saying it's not an effective way of dealing with the problem. The problem is to get these people out of power, quick. And you can get them out of power if you have the vote. If you have the vote.
You are wealth because of your youth and your strength and your malleableness, your ability to be molded. This is our wealth because of their longevity, the transcendence and the time and the experience. This is wealth. There may not be an ATM card to access this wealth.
Come on.
You do that with a question, with a relationship. And this is stuff that you won't find in a textbook unless they write the textbook. And my first black history was taught to me by white college students. They came, they saw, they risked their lives, and they took some of us that they thought was kind of bright, brought us up to their universities at their expense, and shared. You're building lifelong relationships.
That's right.
Let the words of our mouths and the things that we meditate and muse upon in our hearts, may they be acceptable in your sight.
For everywhere in this country, there are first steps to be taken. There's new ground to cover. There are more bridges to be crossed. And it is you, the young and fearless at heart, the most diverse and educated generation in our history, who the nation is waiting to follow.
And all the people said in the Hebrew tongue, Amonah.
Amen.
That means amen.
Amen.
Amen.